that. All right, everyone. So here we're having our Life After Graduation Anthropology edition. This is our fifth former student that's come back to speak to us about their experiences since graduation. Today we're featuring Laura Campbell, who got her bachelor's in anthropology in 2019. After graduation, she worked for a period of time at a nonprofit in New York City. And since then, she has served as a cultural ambassador and language teacher for the Japanese Exchange and Teaching Program known as the JET program. She lived in, did I pronounce that right, Laura?
Fukui, yeah.
Japan, where she taught English and internationalization. She is focusing her career on East Asian languages and art and has worked for a nonprofit Japanese organization while studying the traditional art of calligraphy known as shodo. Shodo, thank you. She is passionate about public and accessible education for all. And today, like I said, Laura is going to share her experiences with the JET program in her talk entitled Stepping Stones to Overseas, Practicing Cultural Relativism. So please help me welcome our 2019 alumna, Laura Campbell. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. Thank you, Dr. Betzinger, for that introduction. It's so nice to see everyone after all this time. It's been so long. And very nice to meet everyone else. So yeah, my name is Laura Campbell. I graduated 2019 after such an amazing time studying anthropology at Oneonta, in which my life drastically changed for the better. On the side, I'm a lover of theater, video games, books, and monkeys. Like Dr. Betzinger said, I worked in New York City for a period of time, and then I worked overseas in Japan, which I've just very recently returned home. So, all right, I am here today to talk about the route I took with my anthropology degree, which has, to put it simply, shifted my entire life and set me on this whirlwind of journeys. So here we go. I'm sure everyone here is curious about all the different ways that an anthropology degree can be used in their career world. I think that every single anthropology student is absolutely amazing in their own way and can truly do anything they want. And I mean it wholeheartedly. To quote such a good Disney movie, adventure is out there. Anthropology students can grasp it all, I think. The preparation that students get from the department at Oneonta really prepares them for that. All right, let's get started. Before I begin, I just want to thank Dr. Betzinger and Dr. Rudzik for reaching out to me to be part of this series. I think it's such an excellent way for past alum to give even like the slightest bit of guidance to current students. All right, let's see. So today I want to discuss a few things. I expect I will talk for about 40 minutes, maybe less. And then after we can have some questions. So what am I going to talk about today? Let's see. All right, so today I'm going to discuss. Okay, one, my journey. What classes changed the trajectory of my career? And what assistantships and internships did I complete? I really want to show everyone that it's so easy to get access to these things too. All right, let's see. Number two, after college work, how to dive into nonprofits. I'm sure that not everyone here is going to work for a nonprofit, but there's probably a good amount of people who's interested in it. So I'm going to talk about that. And number three, moving abroad. I'm going to talk about my stories, the cultural differences and hurdles, applying anthropology to that. And I want to discuss some references for people who are interested in moving abroad as well. Obviously, I lived in Japan, but I know people who have done similar programs in Korea and China, France, and other parts of the world. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So I hope you can find some inspiration or clarity through my own journeys. I'm going to be talking about the good and the bad, so we'll see. I will be sharing my contact information also after, so if anyone wants to connect or has any questions about teaching English abroad, they can definitely reach out to me. So let's get started. So first, I'm going to talk about my academic anthropology journey in school. Now, maybe like some of you, I changed majors. When I first entered Oneonta, I was studying biology. I knew I wanted to work with primates, and I thought, well, studying biology is the only path. Um, but it felt like something was missing. I had that feeling of this isn't 100% right. It's not all here. I remember at the time I had a conversation with my grandpa, and he was always asking me, well, what do you want to study? What do you want to get from, college? And my answer was always, obviously, I want to study primates, but I want to know about, culture and art and places around the world that I don't know about. Um, and I just remember feeling like I just wanted to know about these places I've never been, and the people I've never met. And that was just anthropology. That was just me describing anthropology. So it was great that I found it. In classes in college, aside from anthropology, I felt that often the feeling of something new or something foreign felt difficult and overwhelming. In anthropology classes, the feeling of foreignness or new information felt refreshing and exciting. And so it was the perfect fit for me. Let's see. So first, I'm going to talk about some classwork. I fell in love with so many classes at Oneonta. I have no clue if these classes are still being offered. I'm going to mention them anyway because they really changed my career life. To my understanding, all these professors are still there, so I hope. Um, I want to discuss I'm going to discuss 3 honorable mentions of classes I found most impactful. But I truly believe every single class at Oneonta is just so rewarding in the anthropology department, I will say. So rewarding, so thought out, and so significant. These are just my own memorable ones. So to say these classes changed the trajectory of my career is such an understatement. And honestly, to say that these professors had an impact on my life is to put it too simply. I just want to briefly mention each of these classes. So as anthropology students, I hope you heed my advice. All right, first, my junior year, I took a class with Dr. Klink. I hope she's still there, called The Inca and Their Ancestors. I cannot recommend this class enough. This class was tough. It was full of information. It was full of questions. It was full of challenges. And I just loved learning about a history that I never touched on before. And I knew nothing about it until this class. However, this specific class, not only was it the class material, but this specific professor taught something that she was so passionate about, and she made it challenging in the best way possible. So I felt through that I could fall in love with the same piece of history. My biggest takeaway from that class was the past is full of anomalies that we should still explore today. Anthropologists feel so drawn to the true history of the past, and that's what I got from this class. I am now just 2 months away from a trip to Cusco and Machu Picchu, so it's an understatement to say this class has impacted me long term. I think a lot of people might be able to relate to this feeling, but I used to have a feeling or a worry of like being an imposter, as they say, and I just felt like I kept hearing about all these amazing things that everyone was doing and everyone was, interested in, and I felt like, well, I'll probably never do any of that stuff, until I realized that we all just have the capacity to do it. We can, learn about places we want to go, and then we can just go there, and we can make decisions and research, and we can choose how we want to spend our time. So yeah, that's what I got from this class. To quote Osho, my beloved Indian philosopher, be, do not try to become. So just be right now. So that's what I got from that class. Next, there is a class called Cultural Identities by Dr. Haley. I hope it's still offered. It is an excellent class. I can wholeheartedly recommend any class run by Dr. Haley. I took several classes with him. Every single one of them was enjoyable, educational. However, this class specifically, I got a takeaway of question things. Just be curious about things, be curious about people with absolutely no judgment. Wonder with an open mind why things are the way they are, and why people are the way that they are. So this class really made me realize that people are only people, and they move and they change and they adapt, and we should always question this with intrigue. Let's see. Finally, I want to talk about capstone. This class had the biggest impact on me as an anthropologist. This was the 2019 capstone taught by Dr. Rudzik, titled Issues in Anthropology. When I first started this class, I thought this is going to be tough. It seemed super difficult. There were a lot of lengthy and scary readings and journals. However, it really grew on me to be the best college class I've ever taken. This class taught me the biggest lesson of all, which was accept the unknown and accept the hard to grasp and accept the not being able to understand something. It sounded so easy when I thought about it, but I think that was a mindset that had to kind of settle in my mind until it became a real practice in my everyday life. So yeah, for you, all I can say is the capstone is difficult and it's challenging and thought-provoking in the best way. I was completely immersed in topics I had no interest in previously. And so my advice is dive head on and completely into the capstone. Immerse yourself in the new information, even if you have no interest in it or curiosity. I think I can say let yourself hate a reading, but do it anyway because you'll get something out of it. And let yourself not understand something, and you can still leave at the end of the day not understanding, but that's okay. And I think most importantly, let yourself have a different opinion as other people and say, well, you're right and I'm right and we're both right, because who's to say that, you know, either of us is not right. So yeah, that's what the capstone taught me, and I cannot suggest indulging in it enough. All right, next, let's talk about something lighter, more fun than classes. Research and intern. Let's see. Research assistantships, they are straight up interesting and fun and weird and cool, and they are an excellent way for you to taste what you want to do with your anthropology degree after graduation. So an assistantship is basically when you work with a professor who's in the middle of researching a specific topic or doing a project, or they're completing something they need an assistant for, basically. Sometimes a professor, you know, they won't need an assistant, a research assistant. Maybe they're not in the middle of something, but sometimes they want one, and sometimes they want a little team. But either way, don't be shy and just ask if there's something that they're working on or if they're doing a project or anything. I completed 2 research assistantships at Oneonta. Both of them were fun and fascinating, and I had no idea what I was doing at first, but they gave me experience into the most specific of topics. Ooh, let's see, let's go forward. Okay. So research assistantships, these are my 2 that I did. One of my research assistantships was extracting information from Spanish documents to trace family lineage. This was great. I got to work with a professor I really liked, and I got to practice just a specific and different aspect of anthropology. I think it's really fun being part of something that you also had no knowledge of before. So don't be afraid to get involved, even if you aren't familiar with that topic. Another rewarding part about assistantships is you learn through professors. Anthropology opens so many doors of passion. You know, you have professors spending years on projects because it's something that they're passionate about. And I think it's somewhat magical just being there to see that and help them. My other research assistantship was practicing zoo archaeology through sorting, logging, identifying, and studying excavated samples from a cave site, which was consisting of small animals and birds and fish and stuff. That was so intriguing. I learned so many things that I didn't learn in a classroom. And so it was wonderful working one-on-one with that professor as well. And so if you're wondering, how did I get both of those research assistantships? Honestly, you just ask. So my biggest advice for students interested in, getting a little more experience, and maybe they don't know what experience they want, and maybe they want to work with a professor they really love or connect with a new professor. It is the most basic of advice, but don't be shy. And you can just ask if a professor is completing a research project or if they have something they'd like help with. And you asking could be the perfect time for them. So they might say, well, not this semester, maybe next. I'm looking for someone. Or yeah, I'm looking for someone right now. And so, yeah, you really never know. Don't count yourself out and don't be afraid to just bring it up. Oh, the best thing about research assistantships, you can get a credit or two. I'm not sure the exact number, but you can get some credit for that from them. You receive partial credits, and I think you meet like once or twice a week or once every 2 weeks. It's really flexible, whatever works for you and your professor. And then you usually write a report and submit whatever else you did during that time. So it's really just a great learning experience, and you get some credit. Let's see. I think the overall essence of anthropology is metaphorically and also physically, if you want, touching things that you have no idea the meaning. And so that's really what an assistantship does too. It just opens those doors for you. I'm trying to think what else I can say about assistantships. Yeah, put yourself out there, ask your professors. I would talk to my professors at their office hours and just say things like, I really loved what we did in class today, or I have no understanding of what we did in class. And so, yeah, I think just building those friendships too is really rewarding. Let's see next. Okay, next, I'm going to talk about being an intern. I think interning is a great way for college students and recent grads to get experience. I'm a firm believer that all places should offer an internship. It does so much for college students, and it takes so little from companies. I am a strong believer that interns should be paid, but they're not always paid, and so we take what we can get if we want experience. Hopefully that changes over time. I know people are pushing for all paid internships, so we never know. I did 2 internships as well during my time in undergrad. I am a huge advocate for the AJ Reed Science Discovery Center. I'm imagining it's still there. It is a little interactive and educational science hub. It is absolutely friendly and open to people of all ages, abilities, genders, etc., anyone. They do collabs with local companies. It's crazy because when I was a student, a lot of people didn't know about the Science Center. It's right on campus, and they always have events there. So yeah, I interned there for my whole senior year. During my junior year, I interned there in the summer as well, and I ran a STEM camp. We also organized an after-school program for local girls called Girls in STEM. It's just an amazing platform for interns to express their own interests and learn more about working in an educational setting like that. So this is such an excellent place to intern if you're interested in museums, discovery centers. I had a dear friend who was the director, but I believe he left a little while ago, but I have no doubt that anyone in there is an excellent fit running it. So please check it out. And I imagine they're still taking student interns, so don't be shy. I also completed an internship at the Yeager Museum of Art and Culture. Again, amazing place run by excellent people. This is at Hartwick. I got experience curating there. I got experience deinstalling and installing exhibits, mounting works, packing and unpacking. I got collection management experience, learning museum databases. That was such a good fit for me because that museum also let me explore my own passions, curiosities in such a rewarding setting. Unfortunately, it was to my understanding that SUNY Oneonta students can't intern there, so we must leave it to the Hartwick students. But I'm sure you could still volunteer there. They have events sometimes, so keep an eye out and pay to visit. Let's see. Both of these internships, I would imagine any nonprofit internship, but they gave me back end and front end experience in a museum. So I got to experience working by myself in a museum setting and then working like a public facing position in a museum, which I mean, they have rewarded me immensely this far in my career. So I don't think I could have worked in New York City doing large scale programs if I didn't have that small experience beforehand. So before I finish talking about coursework, assistantships, internships, I just want to say it is so easy to intertwine your passions with your love for anthropology. So, don't be afraid to like different and weird and unique things. I think it's what makes the best of anthropologists. When I was interning at the Jaeger Museum, I got to explore East Asian art more. And then I went on to study, more East Asian art, languages, and history in my other classwork. So it was really just a great platform for that. Let's see. All right, diving into nonprofits. Okay, so a very popular route for anthropology students to take, obviously, is working at nonprofits. We're all passionate about learning, teaching, accessibility, and so much more. So for me, right after I graduated, like I said, I was working in New York City at a nonprofit. I worked for a large Japanese organization. We had a theater, a library, a language center, an art museum, and a corporate office upstairs. I worked in the programs department. We frequently had public events around traditional Japanese art, culture, food, and pop culture events as well. So that was great. Through this, I was able to meet Japanese government officials, and that kind of pushed me to want to move to Japan a little more. However, before accepting that position and right around the same time, I scored interviews at the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney Art Museum, and Lincoln Center. So it's totally possible to get those interviews, right after you graduate. You just have to find out the best way to, format all of your experience and your interests. And also, after a year at my first nonprofit, I worked at a comic book shop. So don't be afraid to go with the flow of everything. Life is not a perfect line. So be kind to yourself and see where it goes. So where do we find nonprofit job listings? Hold on, let me plug in my laptop real quick. So I focused my job search around New York City because I lived so close to the city at the time. An excellent website that I used was NYFA. They list a whole bunch of nonprofit jobs, nonprofit internships. Also, I recommend making a list of all the museums or nonprofit organizations you'd be interested in working and checking their career pages all the time. For me personally, third-party sites were not as effective, although they have been effective for other people, but for me personally, I didn't get much feedback from them. So I would recommend applying directly on a company's site if it's a museum or nonprofit. So all you really have to do is research where you'd want to work and be very persistent. No. Let's see. Also, I have listed a website, NJLA. They list jobs in libraries for people who don't have masters in library science. And so some people might be interested in that too. So I listed that website. They're pretty great and they update pretty frequently. Next thing I'm going to talk about is recommendations. If you didn't do any internships or research assistantships yet, do not feel lost or worried when it comes to applying for nonprofit jobs. Anything that you've done anthropology related, it can be applied. So I think that you can ask an advisor, a professor that you like, and they'd be more than happy to help you with a recommendation and support you in that career path. And lastly, I would say the difficulty with nonprofits, the most difficult thing is that they are so competitive. The toughest part of getting your foot in the door is that's just the hardest part of it all. If you're around a very large city, there are a lot of opportunities, but even so, the competition is a little higher. But if you stick with it and keep at it diligently, I think it'll pay off. It just does take time, but don't be discouraged. And if there's like a specific nonprofit, I don't know, place you're interested in or curious about, I could give you advice. So you could always feel free to reach out to me about how I handled my job applications and cover letters and stuff. Right, let's see. So to quote, share one of my favorite quotes of all time, I am not the same, having seen the moon shine on the other side of the world. So it's time to talk about moving overseas. If you're listening to this talk, there might be a chance that you're interested in moving abroad for work. I think living abroad is one of the best ways someone can widen their mindset and their outlook on themselves and everyone around them. Living abroad for work while keeping an anthropology mindset of cultural relativism, that everyone is valid and everyone's experiences and thoughts are valid to themselves. This is how you find yourself learning the most. I think many anthropologists want to go abroad for this exact reason. So as an anthropologist, there might be an area that you feel you want to explore the most. And I'm sure there would be some programs or jobs there for you. So moving abroad really opens those doors. And let's see, why else should you move abroad? I will talk about the serious stuff first. I think moving abroad, hold on a second, let me check. Sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay, I think that the most important and the best thing about moving abroad is language expansion. It is so true what they say about living a language just compared to studying it. The genuine language knowledge, understanding, and appreciation you gain after living in a country that speaks nationally another language other than English, the difference is so immense compared to that of a textbook. There are nuances, there are tones, there are hidden meanings of a language that can't be, picked up through just a textbook. I can't say enough about this, especially for linguistic lovers. I studied Japanese for 2 years before I moved to Japan. And while I was there, I even found my speech and choice of words awkward, unnatural, and just not understanding of the social cues yet. So, oh boy, does it take living in a culture to really grasp what you're even saying and how you're coming across and how other people are coming across. But yeah, that experience and that reward is something that I think is important for people who are passionate about linguistics. There are languages all over the world with more than one alphabets, with borrowed words, with tonal attributes, languages that change with respect on who you're speaking to, languages you have to be careful so you don't insult anyone, and languages that are gendered. So there's a lot that, can be learned through languages about a culture itself. And another reason to move abroad, cross-cultural experiences. These are just the experiences that you cannot have unless you're in another country. That's pretty basic. These range from anywhere between, meeting people, visiting places, experiencing a tradition, something like that. And lastly, I will say a good thing about moving abroad is acclimation. You may see changes within yourself in everyday life. The way that you think might change, the way that you eat, the way you speak, the way you talk to those around you. Those would all adjust. Well, they might not too, but they might adjust. And so it would be great to see that change within yourself. All right, so I do know a big reason that some anthropology graduates move abroad is to teach English. I'm going to be talking about some resources for moving abroad and, of course, my own experiences. First, I'll be talking about my journey, the good and the bad, and then some resources and how you can get into that too. Okay, so my journey, let me change this. By the time I started my senior year in college, I already knew that I wanted to move abroad for work after graduation. I knew that it would be to Japan, hopefully, because of my passions and my studies and my goals. I filled my classes with history classes, language classes, and like several thousands of other people, I applied for the JET program. The JET program is one of the most competitive language programs in the world. The JET program is a program run by the Japanese government. You get placed in a board of education all around Japan. You act as a cultural ambassador and a language teacher, volunteering locally and teaching English in usually a middle school or a high school, or both. You get a work visa through the JET program. You become a working Japanese citizen and you stay on year-long contracts of I'm going to say of up to 6 or 7 years. That is off the books. I know people who have stayed 7 years. The JET program says 5 years max. But again, nothing's written in stone. And so everything changes. For the JET program, thousands of people apply every year. Very few get selected. When I applied, the acceptance rate was 16%. The average applicant, it takes 2 to 3 times. So the application process for JET is 1 year. If you don't make it the first time, you wait till the next year to apply. That is absolutely normal for people trying to move abroad. Usually it's a 1-year process. But don't feel discouraged if you're not ready yet, and you can wait till the next round. I got accepted on my first try, so it is very possible. And I have high hopes for all anthropologists to get accepted on their first try, honestly. So don't be worried or scared. I think that anthropology students have a mindset and others might not have. I'm just biased, but I think working abroad to teach English is something that is rewarding for anthropologists. Let's see. So today I want to talk about the good and the bad about being abroad that I faced in my journey. Let's see. Okay, this is just a mashup of photos of me. I'm going to leave it up while I talk. Let's see. So working abroad, there's so much I have to say. I'm just going to ramble. Working abroad is a crazy journey. It is beautiful and fun and wild, and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But it is really not true that working abroad and being an expat is someone, if you don't know, who leaves their home country to live and work in another country. So there's, being an expat is not all heaven. It's not all perfect. It's not all forgiving, and it's not ever kind. Moving abroad is very tough in some ways. I'm going to discuss smaller difficulties as well as bigger cultural difficulties that myself faced abroad, and then also other people in countries other than Japan as well that I'm just friends with, and I'm going to share their experiences too. So difficulties of moving abroad. A little difficulty. This is everything I'm going to say is based on my own experience. Make more money. You won't. It is very expensive to move abroad. You still pay taxes, and the pay in other countries may be significantly lower than that in America. I'm not saying it's always like this, but it very well might be. For me, I lived in a very rural and traditional part of Japan, and the cost of living was low, but the pay was very low too. The ratio is almost the same as to living in a city in America. So just keep in mind, if you have student loans to pay off or other things like that, you're not going to be rich and moving abroad. But hey, I was going to say, don't count yourself out. I have thousands of dollars in student loans I'm still paying off, and I didn't think twice about moving abroad for work. So if you have to struggle a little bit, it is all part of the journey. Another little difficulty I'm going to mention, networking. This could work. It didn't work for me in a business sense. Not so sure about that. I was in a very rural area. Most people didn't speak English. People that worked there probably have lived there their whole lives, because that's just the way that the culture is there. I think if I was in a big city, networking could have been awesome for me, but it's not always the case when you move abroad. I think that personal networking was fun. I made some absolutely amazing friends, and so that was rewarding from that. Let's see. Okay, a very important difficulty I'm going to talk about. Isolation and loneliness. There is a huge, huge hushed dark side of living abroad among expats. It is very taboo to talk about. Expats have crazy statistics against substance abuse, depression, and anxiety. Expats, I just found this out a few days ago, they are more than twice as likely to develop a substance abuse because of depression and anxiety. There is a staggering statistic. 50% of expats may face mental health difficulties, such as depression and anxiety. I can say this is all too true. I have a network of people that I made friends overseas with, a group of expats, and it is really isolating and it is difficult. I think a big proponent that doesn't get spoken about beforehand, but gets talked about all the time when you accept a job abroad, is that it is very isolating and it's very lonely. And it's not always the case, but it can be. So we should heed that advice. But I found in my darkest times on the other side of the world that there were days where I didn't speak English at all, and days where I only saw the few people in my office. And even then, you're not speaking English much. So it's really alienating. But at the same time, it's all a learning experience. So we can't let it get to us too much. I'll say that when you're in another country, you feel alone in ways that are different than feeling alone in your home country. There's no network at all. Sometimes, this is of course my own experience. There is a really good book that I'm going to recommend. It's called Importing Diversity inside Japan's JET program. It's just such a well-balanced dialogue talking about the benefits of working abroad as well as the harmful aspects. And that's specifically about the JET program. I read it before I moved to Japan, and it just made all too much sense once I was there working. So to snowball right off of that, I want to talk about the cultural differences about working abroad, aside from just my own personal little difficulties I found. So I want to mention that I'm going to discuss some cultural differences that were challenging, but I'm not speaking for everyone or saying that everyone would be impacted by these. I'm also not saying that these need to be fixed or corrected or changed. I just think as anthropologists, we should note cultural difficulties so that people don't feel alone if they're realizing these. One major difficulty found in other countries that you don't think about is privacy. I had a very good friend I met in Japan. He had just moved there from Korea. He did a teaching program in Korea. I'm going to talk about it later. It's called EPIC. He left a very difficult job and he shared his stories with me. It was normal for his job to monitor his internet activity at home through his Wi-Fi, and then bring it up in the office. Of course, this was his experience and I'm just sharing it, but privacy is very different in other countries. Me personally, there's not a lot of medical privacy in Japan. In America, we have HIPAA and laws like that. I am not sure if that exists in Japan. I went for a physical several times. It occurs in a big open room where there's booths and there's a lot of other people there too. And there's not much privacy, and it kind of gets shared with the room, anything that's being talked about or given back to you. At work, my supervisor often read my mail, and I'm pretty sure every time I went to the doctor's office, he knew. So there's not much privacy whatsoever. And that's just the norm. It's not that, people over there are going against privacy. That is just the norm over there. And by over there, I mean in the very rural areas of Japan where I was. And so, yeah, we have to be mindful of differences. Of course, that was in Tokyo. In Japanese, they say inaka, and that means countryside, but it also means the middle of nowhere. So that's where I was. Another big problem I had that I think I can't stress enough, I had doctors deny seeing me or taking me as a patient because my Japanese wasn't fluent. I spoke a really good amount of Japanese, but when it comes to medical jargon, it's incredibly difficult if you don't hear that all the time. And I had doctors straight up say, we can't take you here. So those are difficulties that we should be careful about. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just touch on this. Another difficulty that I faced abroad. There are different meanings to the word inappropriate. I had instances where I was being inappropriate and I didn't know. And there are instances where people said very inappropriate things to me. And of course, they didn't know or didn't think it. And so these are just an example of, cross-cultural interactions. Both of us viewing the same interaction completely different. I can talk about this for a very long time, but I won't. I can say that there were oddities to me living alone in a rural area as a foreign woman. I think that, yeah, I'll say that. I'll share an experience I had. I had several people mention to me about, in a formal office setting, about my body and my weight. I had a male colleague tell me in front of everyone, oh, you would be so cute if you lost more weight. I've had older women, tell me I should go on a diet. And so there are a lot of things like that, that, it's very shocking, but over there, that's so normal. Yes. So I've had ladies grab my arm and say, oh, you're so chubby. And so it's a little weird. So I think that dealing with that for almost 2 years is so waning on a person. If it happens occasionally, it's okay, but after a while, it can be harmful. So that's all I'm going to say about that. A time when I was being inappropriate and I didn't know, I wasn't aware that it's inappropriate for men and a woman in the countryside to hang out outside of work privately. I became friends with an older gentleman who was about to retire. So kind of looked at him like a professor relationship. We bonded over movies and books and TV shows. And I was so passionate about, let's go to the cafe and, let's go to the movie theater and let's go to the bookshop. Finally, it took my secretary telling me it was too inappropriate, and that would, I was wondering, why is he always saying no? So that is times we have to be wary of. The last thing I'm going to touch about, I feel strongly about this topic. It's actually something that I found harmful while being abroad. I'm a big advocate on size inclusivity for women. I think that every woman should feel valid and right in their own bodies. However, we know living in Asia, the sizes are much, much smaller than America. Not only that, but I came across the F size. F size is all over Japan, and it means free size. That means one size for everyone, one size fits all, no matter what. So I often went into shopping malls in Japan, and every clothing store was F size. So if you don't fit in F size, you cannot buy clothes in Japan. I was okay with this because I didn't let it affect me. However, it put the idea in my mind, how women might feel growing up and only ever knowing F size. And so I felt that that was something I wanted to take with me as, that is a harmful viewpoint. I don't think women should feel the need to fit into a mold. But going off that, there is such amazing, beautiful, and good aspects of moving abroad. You will meet amazing people. You will meet people who are smart from different walks of life. I made 2 absolutely dear friends to me from different countries, different ages, and I still talk to them in Japanese and English all the time. I think that there's something special about living in a country as an expat with people. You create a very strong bond. When I was abroad, I felt such a scary thought of, well, no one back home is ever going to understand me, and no one back home is ever going to understand this. And I think that was a harmful thought I was having, but it really helped me build a strong connection with the friends over there. You will visit life-changing places. Truly, you will see beautiful and breathtaking places, places filled with dark history and good history, and places that have not changed for decades, and places that have changed in the last year. And you can experience so much culture that you wouldn't get in just the museum. I've tasted food that I didn't even know existed. I've been to parts of cities that I never even heard of. Let's see. Oops. To quote George R. R. Martin, one of my favorite authors, though problematic, I've lived 1,000 lives, all because I read. And that's how I feel about anthropology, and also reading. But that's how I feel about anthropology. All because I'm an anthropologist, I've felt thousands of feelings. Ooh, that just freaked out. Okay, let's see. So lastly, the best thing about moving abroad, the absolute best, passions. You will find so many passions. I got so interested in kabuki, Japanese theater. I furthered my love for calligraphy while I was abroad. I found people who were true masters of such a dying tradition. And I valued every moment I could spend with them. It was so crazy. Just a few years ago, I was learning Shodo in New York City, and then I was in Japan teaching it to middle schoolers. And so it just really held a special place in my heart. I learned instruments and I sang songs that I didn't know. And I spoke Japanese to hundreds of people in speeches. And so I think going abroad, although it's scary, and although there's some things that we need to be cautious of, there's no bad reward to it. I explored religion without questioning what I even believed in. I don't know, but I did, so it's good. I think as an anthropologist, it's so important to have these experiences. When you come back, you will be all the different. Before I left, everyone in my family was saying, "Aren't you scared? Aren't you scared to move abroad?" And I probably should have been scared, but I wasn't, because we shouldn't let our fear overpower us or change our minds. And that is Japan. Now let's see. Of course, I talked a lot about me teaching in Japan. However, there are other teaching programs all over the world. There's more than this. I'm going to mention this because I know people who have done all of these programs. The JET program is the one in Japan that I just talked about. It is probably, from all of these, from what I heard, the highest paying one, the one with the best benefits. There is EPIC. It is huge in Korea. I have not been to Korea. I know people who have done EPIC. That is a really, really popular one. CIEE in China. I know a girl who lived in China to teach English, and I don't know if she went through this program. There's TAPIF in France. My roommate from college, she did TAPIF. It is a 7-month program, so it's much shorter than JET, and I'm pretty sure that they don't help you get set up. So that's something to keep in mind. For the JET program, they help you find an apartment and you pay for it on your own and everything. The PIF, I think my friends stayed in an Airbnb. So Interac, that is Japan too. It is in the big cities, usually Tokyo. The pay is a little lower, but if you only want to go to Japan to be in cities, that's the one for you. JET program, you're most likely to get placed in a very, very rural area. And Peace Corps. I know someone who taught English. Oh, I can't remember where, but he taught English in another part of the world through Peace Corps. And they have programs all over. So again, very competitive Peace Corps, but worth it. Let's see. I'm going to talk about TEFL and TESOL. If you've never heard of TEFL and TESOL, and you're interested in moving abroad to teach English, you need to get this. Usually programs require a 120-hour course of training. However, I will give you the inside scoop. You can finish it in a few days. You can finish it in a week. You don't need to stretch it out to 3 months. I did a completely online course. It was about $300 for a TOEFL, and it said 120 hours, and I finished it very quickly. To go back to the program in Korea, EPIC, they require in-person training through TEFL or TESOL. So my second point is make sure to check your program's requirements. But most teaching programs require you either have a TEFL or a TESOL. That means teaching English as a foreign language or teaching English as a second language, I think. So the cost is, it's about $300. Some of the classes vary. Some of the classes I've seen for $1,000. Please, you don't need that. Well, or you could, I suppose, if you wanted. But also the good thing about getting a TEFL or a TESOL is that a lot of those companies help you find a job abroad. If you can't get into JET, or you're struggling to pick a place, those sites usually list teaching jobs abroad. Okay, so lastly, I just want to talk about acceptance. Absolutely. Anthropology changed me as a student, and it changed me as a human, and it benefited my future, I can easily say. A lot of my career thus far, especially being abroad, I had to be alone for a long period of time. I was just telling Dr. Walker, once I was traveling during a bad storm, and I traveled for 4 days instead of like 15 hours. And I was alone in big cities that I've never been to. And I didn't have a phone. And so that was very scary. But I truly believe that I wouldn't have gained such insight and confidence in myself if I didn't have the mindset that I got from anthropology. Like I mentioned earlier, the professors at Oneonta impacted me so greatly. So you can certainly take inspiration from professors you might feel connected with. So about the word acceptance, I think I learned acceptance of myself and acceptance of different people, acceptance that everyone's different in the ways that they think and the way that they live. To quote Jane Austen, because my mind is full of quotes, what is a man to rocks and mountains? And that's how I feel even about myself. Who am I to make any assumptions or opinions on other people? And so I think that we have to have this humble mindset towards each other and towards ourselves as well. So let's accept difficulties. And that's it. So that's my contact information. Sorry, I didn't leave much time for questions, but you can definitely email me, and we can connect on LinkedIn if you wish or want to talk about moving abroad or anything. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We do have time for a couple of questions, maybe in the room or anybody online. If you don't want to do it, you can always put it into the chat if you would like. Does anyone have any questions for Laura?
No pressure.
No pressure. I have a question for you, Laura. You went initially for 1 year and you ended up staying 2, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And then did you stay in the same place or did they move you?
I stayed in the same place. I'll tell you that it's nearly impossible to move once you accept a position with the JET program. They tell you beforehand, if you come and you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling my place. I wish I could go to a big city. It's almost impossible. They find it's kind of insulting. And so it can be a tough feeling to navigate. So that's that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Questions? All right, well, I'm going to be right at the end of our time. So Laura, thank you so very much. This is always so great for our students, both in anthropology and not in anthropology, to hear this. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, some of those websites are really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. They're great.
Mm-hmm.
And as Laura said, if you have questions you don't want to ask here, reach out to her. She's got her email address there. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jen, and everyone have a really good day.
Have fun in Machu Picchu, Laura. Oh my
Thank
God.
you. I will.
So exciting.
I know, it's very
Professor Klink will be glad to hear that.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh yes, definitely tell her.
We'll tell her.
Oh, it was so great seeing everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks. Let me stop sharing my screen. Oh, thank you so much. Hi, Dr. Redsick.
Oh, she's
Yes.
Hi.